What's up, guys? Brady Figuel here, coming at you with a review for the new World Depression album, Abysmal Void, put out this past Friday, September 19th. These guys are a German death metal band. It's actually their 7th album, and to me, they seem to be one of those bands that kind of attempts to bring back and maintain a new school, old school death metal vibe, if that makes any sense. And that's kind of a hit or miss kind of genre in general, but also for me. Just because at its worst, it is pretty much fully derivative. And you could slap other criticisms on it too, like, I don't know, one-dimensional, maybe not very exciting at times, to put it bluntly. But when you have a modern band bringing the riffs, bringing the aggression, bringing the meanness, these albums can work. So to me, the burning question with this review is, does this album do that? One thing that definitely helped its case is that the first 3 songs on here are absolute fucking rippers. Like, going through these first 3 tracks, I was convinced that the entire album was going to hold up to these 3 songs, and we'd have another high 20s scored album on my channel, which I feel like I've been doing like so much of lately. You hit play on the first track, The Vault, and you get like these, they're I want to say they're crowd vocals, but they almost sound like they're screaming in pain. Or like maybe it's like a riot. I don't really know. It could be either one of those, I think. But you get those sounds mixed with like what sounds like maybe waves crashing, and then it kicks into this fucking mean ass tremolo riff, and then a harmony gets thrown on top. It's just like death metal chef's kiss. There's also the bridge that gets a little more doomy, which I enjoyed. The entire song is just full of sick fucking melodies that genuinely do sound not just mean, but at times evil even. And then Book of Trophies, the next song, kind of trades off between, again, another pretty cool tremolo riff and just this steamrolling double bass driven groove that, again, just like it just fucking takes your head off the second you hit play. But then this song, interestingly enough, kind of has some melodic death metal influence with a lot of those mournful type melodies played on the lead guitar in that kind of first like chorus section, I guess you can call it that, maybe. So only 2 tracks into the band is kind of already experimenting a little bit, and that's great to see. I feel like a lot of times with an album like this, a band might want to get the more straightforward ideas out right away, so then you can leave the middle and the end of the album for experimenting. But in this case, the band gets right to it. I also love the 3rd track on here, Spoils of War, and this one takes on more of a mid-tempo feel the whole time, and those open chord riffs kind of bring in somewhat of a hardcore influence. Funny thing with this song is, in like that pre-chorus section, you get this like ascending, climbing riff that just is so fucking towering, but it kind of gets cut short, and it's one of those parts that you want to hear more of it. And I remember I was listening through this song the first time, and I was thinking to myself, like, I really hope they bring that riff back and they flesh it out. I'm really fucking hoping. And then they did at the end of the song. I still think it could have been a little bit longer because that riff is just so fucking badass. I feel like you could just repeat it for a minute and it would still sound awesome. But that dynamic, the entire song, and then that kind of bridge being, again, a little bit more doomy, a bit murkier, it allows this song to kind of give you that ending part to almost look forward to, and then the entire track feels like it's almost building to that. But that is the exact moment that the album loses momentum for me. As soon as Spoils of War ends with just apocalyptic guitar riff, you get 3 tracks in a row that do nothing for me. Like Blind Eyes and Marching on Our Graves, when they kick in, they just sound a little bit dull. Like these riffs and these drum parts especially kind of don't have as much of a sense of urgency as the first 3 tracks do. Blind Eyes especially is probably the most skippable track on here overall. The riffs just aren't nearly as memorable. The entire song, again, just feels a little bit sluggish because it's stuck between those 2 tempos that really work for death metal, in my opinion. You got the balls out fast tempos and then the slower, doomier stuff. This song kind of just sits awkwardly in the middle of that, and I will say the same about Marching on Our Graves. That song does have some interesting lead guitar melodies at times, but in general, these 2 songs back to back just They don't feel like they have that same crackling energy as the first 3 tracks did, like I just said. Something that also doesn't really help their case is kind of like I alluded to with the drums. The drums on these couple songs in particular just feel a little bit caveman. Like it's a lot of the just 16th notes on the double bass nonstop, and it just gets a little bit uninteresting as a result for me. And And then Burning Down is a little bit better. It does have some okay tremolo riffing again, but again, just it doesn't have the same energy. Like I was at this point listening to this album for the first time, waiting for the song at this point that kind of regained and recaptured that energy. And ironically, the track that does it is, I think, tempo-wise, the slowest song on here. That being Grenadier. Just those intro melodies just have this lurk to them. It's almost devilish in a way. And then once the full band really kicks in, you get one of the grooviest riffs on the album, that verse riff, which is just an absolute earworm. The lead guitar throughout pretty much this entire song also adds a lot. Again, the lead guitar has some great melodies being played. It's just interesting that when the melodies and note choices are right, and they set the right mood, and they do enough interesting stuff rhythmically, that literally, I think, the slowest track on here tempo-wise actually picks up the momentum. I can't help but see the irony in that. But overall, that track definitely does step the album up overall. Expect No Mercy, the next track, is definitely one of the better ones on here. It's got this really ominous intro that does a good job of building tension before it kicks into some tremolo riffing yet again. You do have, again, one of those double bass grooves and the riff over it that where the melodies kind of sound a little familiar to me, so that might have been tiptoeing into derivative as an adjective, but in general, this album does a good job of avoiding that, I would say. Aside from that, I like it. It's got a decent solo. The chorus section actually has a cool progression in the drums where they actually do two different things for each of the two stanzas in that chorus in a way, so it does break free from some of that drumming monotony, I will call it. Also, when the blast beats kick in, when that main riff kicks in too. Carnage is on a similar level here. It does have this pretty mean-sounding intro and this quirky little main riff that I like. In this track, the one thing that turned me off a little bit was the solo, because it just felt a little bit lazy in a sense that it essentially all it does is follow the rhythm guitar melodies underneath it. So in a way, it almost to me feels more like an overdub over that rhythm section part, as opposed to the lead guitar actually functioning and doing its own thing, which would be a solo. And then the closer, Moonbound Hunger, has some really cool moments that I enjoy. It's got this really groovy verse riff that has just this really infectious bounce to it. And again, it has like this climbing tremolo riff in the pre-chorus that I like. This track, honestly, might have consistently the best riffing overall, in a sense that every groove on here is really, really memorable. Like even the intro one, how it's got those mid-tempo drums with some more space contrasting that tremolo part. And again, the melodies and the note choices in this song give it this kind of distinct dark mood again, like I mentioned earlier for a few other tracks. So I mean, overall, this album is, maybe somewhat of a mixed bag, but at its worst, at its absolute worst, it just bores me a little. There's nothing on here that I thought was bad. If I could give one overarching criticism on this album, aside from the drums, like I mentioned earlier times, I think the vocal production suffers a little bit. I think they were performed well, and if they were produced well, I just think they could have been a lot more impactful and driven the song a little bit better, because the way they're produced on here, it makes them sound a little bit thin. They sound significantly more lo-fi than the instruments do. And I also think they were mixed a little bit too loud. I think they would have sounded better on this overall album if they were maybe a little bit more quiet, because when they're so loud in the mix like that, you notice those production flaws to my ears more. That aside, though, vocals aside, I think this album is produced and mixed very well. The drums have a really good balance in a sense that they're not polished or anything. They're actually far from polished, but they're still distinguishable and they still punch through the mix. My number one turnoff with a lot of extreme metal is when it's intentionally produced to sound lo-fi, which is at times just like an excuse for the album to sound like shit, if we're being honest. I know some people enjoy that, but it does nothing for me. I don't see why a band would want their music to sound bad. It just doesn't make sense to me. But even including the vocals, this album doesn't do that, and I definitely appreciated that. And in terms of the songs themselves, like you've already heard me say, they're a little bit of a mixed bag, but there's 4 songs on this record that I really fucking love. There's 3 that I think are just okay, and there's a couple that are in the middle. So as far as I'm concerned, overall, this is still a good album. And for that reason, I'm going to score it a 20 out of 30. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. Remember to hit the subscribe button for more rock and metal-related content, as well as check the description for all of my links, including one to my original music. It's good to kind of be talking about an extreme metal album again, too. I feel like there were just so many big blockbuster mainstream releases the last, month or two now that I haven't been able to dive deep into some underground stuff. So I'm glad I was able to do that with this review. And if you listen to this album, if you're a follower of this band, please comment your thoughts below. I'm not super familiar with their catalog, so if there are any fans of them, maybe leave a comment and tell me what album you would recommend for me to listen to, given what I've said about this record in my review. Yeah, once again, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, I'll see you guys later. Peace.